Objective, day 90 of the war in Israel. I'm joined today by Eitan Fischberger. Eitan has written about UNRWA. We're going to talk about UNRWA today again. Eitan has written about UNRWA for National Review and the Washington Examiner. And Eitan, you published a thread. You went into the belly of the beast, at least online. It's probably better to do it online. And went on and joined a Telegram group of Unra teachers, and you found some interesting things there that again are not surprising to those of us who know UNRWA, who know how the UN operates, but they're still very, very important to mention and not stop mentioning until something is done about this. So before we get to that thread, just generally, we've spoken about the UN on this channel, and people in Israel, I think, are more aware of the problems with the UN. We mentioned that UN Watch has mentioned that in 2023 there have been 14 General Assembly condemnations of Israel, 7 of the rest of the world. This is not unusual. It's not a 2023 thing. It's a UN thing. So your general thoughts and insights about the UN before we go specifically to UNRWA and the Twitter thread.
Sure. So, first of all, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Great to be on. I, for lack of time, I'll shorten my criticism of the UN when it comes to Israel. But like you said, the fact that they have the audacity to condemn Israel every day of the week, more times than the rest of the world combined, whether it's the General Assembly or in the Human Rights Council, it's a shame, and I think that everything everyone already knew about the UN pre-October 7th. So post-October 7th, it's been solidified beyond a shadow of a doubt. I mean, there's no way about it. The UN, we've seen their aid bags in Gaza. The IDF has been releasing footage of UN aid bags with ammo inside of it. They found UN material in terror tunnels. They have Hamas fighters on October 7th raiding southern Israel with UN medical supplies that says UN on it, on the trucks with the AK-47s. They have one of the hostages that was released said that she was actually held captive for 50 days in an Unra teacher's house. So I could go on, but for lack of time.
Yeah, and this is not, one bad apple or 10, 15 bad apples or somebody stealing a UN truck and so the label is there. This is very much built in, and it's very much built in with UNRWA itself, the UN body for Palestinian refugees. I think is the official designation of it. So, do you want to shortly before we go into the specifics of that thread, tell us your ideas or what you know about UNRWA, what we should know about UNRWA when we judge it? Is it fixable? And yeah, how should we approach it?
Sure. So first of all, there's been talk recently about Israel actually saying that maybe UNRWA should be defunded, which has not been the position of Israel, if I'm not mistaken, up until now, for various geopolitical reasons, because that would exacerbate the quote unquote refugee crisis, and they wouldn't know what to do with that. So there are all these political considerations, how that would affect the U.S.-Israel relationship. There's a lot to talk about there, but I want to put that aside one second. I just want to talk about UNRWA, the institution itself. And obviously, like we were just discussing, everyone knows that UNRWA is has a very, let's say, close relationship, or not distant relationship, with Hamas. And I think that one of the more interesting tidbits that not many people know that I think is really worth highlighting is that UNRWA actually has, what do they have? I think 30,000 employees, 3 times more than the UN High Commission for Refugees. So they have an enormous amount of employees, 30,000 staff. And they have, like a lot of big companies, organizations, they'll have unions inside of these organizations. And the union of UNRWA is actually led by lists that are made up of Hamas and the PFLP. So they have these elections every year, 2 years, whatever it is. And consistently for over a decade now, it's been won by the quote unquote Hamas list. So, they have people that are literally members of Hamas getting money getting paid by the UN, which means actually getting paid by the taxpayers of the various countries that are funding the UN, whether it's the US, the UK, all the European countries. So it's just it's an absolute disaster zone. Obviously, there's the issue that they define refugees in a way different than all the rest of the refugees combined, the rest of the world. They basically make it so that any Palestinian anywhere in the world born, you know, is going to be a refugee automatically and in perpetuity, which is it's meant to perpetuate the conflict. So someone once said to me, "Oh, UNRWA is the most ineffective UN agency ever," and I said, "Actually, UNRWA is the most effective UN agency out there because it's doing exactly what it said it was going to do. It's going to perpetuate and exacerbate and broaden the refugee crisis, and then it's exactly what it's done." So that's my spiel about UNRWA generally.
Yeah, and by the way, you mentioned PFLP. For people not familiar, that is the
Oh, yeah.
Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, a communist terrorist organization. They're not, I think we've mentioned them on the show as well. They're not as popular as they used to be, but they still have the word popular in their name.
Yes, they
And
do.
so, one thing when we hear people accusing Israel of everything they can accuse Israel of, the one of the popular ones is they're bombing schools and hospitals. And so Hamas knows this, of course. Hamas knows that this is a good thing to say to the world because think about it, and like this is you're bombing schools and hospitals. So this is this is something that is knowingly done and is done with the cooperation of UNRWA. These are in many cases UNRWA schools and UNRWA hospitals, right?
Yeah, I mean, then we also have footage of them firing rockets, Hamas firing rockets from, the courtyards of UNRWA schools. It's there are so many video. Thank God for social media because otherwise we really would not have seen any of this footage. I mean, if this was 30 years ago, this footage would never get out. We would never see it. But now you just go onto Twitter or X, sorry, or Instagram or YouTube. You just put in UNRWA school rockets and you'll see it. They barely even try to hide it. It's pretty amazing.
So thank you, Jonathan, for the super chat. Yeah, so speaking of social media, you went on Telegram, you joined the Unra Teachers Telegram channel. What can you tell us about that?
Sure. So Telegram, for those who aren't aware of it, it's a very niche app. It's sort of like WhatsApp, if you guys are familiar with that, wherever you are, where people can just chat. They can anonymize themselves. So you can hide your phone number, you can hide your name, your picture. So it's just like a random person, you know who it is, and it's known to be full of more extremist content. Hamas has a very heavy presence on Telegram, and so I figured, okay, well, UNRWA probably has a Telegram channel because it's popular in the Arab world. So they probably have all these various main channels, sub channels, whatever. And I went onto Telegram and I literally just put in UNRWA. And then an UNRWA teachers group came up with 3,000 members, I think, of the channel. I went onto the channel, I joined the channel, and I figured the quote unquote juiciest or most extreme content that I would probably find, the most anti-Semitic pro-terror content, would probably be on October 7th. So I rewound the app back to October 7th, and I just saw footage of the Hamas terrorists breaking through the fence, committing, heinous atrocities against the Jewish people, against Israelis, um, things that we probably wouldn't want to say here on the air right now, but the worst crimes that you can imagine. And the users and all the members are UNRWA teachers, or UNRWA educators, contractors, you name it. And they're putting up heart emojis and they're saying, "Oh, praise Allah, this is amazing. We love this. And these are our heroes, our brave fighters." And since October 7th, they'll routinely post Hamas propaganda videos, speeches by Hamas leaders that are similarly glorified and praised by these members. And it's what I think is really fascinating about Telegram is because it's all anonymous, they really allow themselves the freedom to really express what they truly feel. Even I find when I've come across people supporting Hamas or supporting terror on other platforms, they'll still kind of I don't know the word in English, they'll kind of tone it down a little bit, and I mean like really a little bit. But on Telegram, they'll just go no holds barred. They'll just unleash every bit of hatred that they have and every bit of terror support that they have. And yeah, That's pretty much what I found, along with all these other files. They 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 uploaded files of 1,800 UNRWA workers where you get like the names and everything. So I said on the thread, if anyone wants to do anything, there's a lot of juicy material here, names and phone numbers of UNRWA staff. Anyway, that's what I found on the channel.
Yeah, by the way, on let me follow up on that. On doing something about it, is anything actually could anything be done? This is not is this a situation where somebody's going to get fired? Now, the situation now in Gaza is a bit different. It's not as easy as it used to be to get away with this kind of stuff.
Right.
But is there going to be real? Is anything going to bring real significant change within UNRWA, let alone dismantling the organization? But is there any hope?
Um, Listen, I mean, I'm forced to have hope because like my options are either to to sit and cry on social media or to do something about it. So I'm doing my best, and I think that there is hope. I think that, you know, it's unfortunate that a lot of countries continue to fund this organization post October 7th. I understand I'm trying to understand their point of view, why they would do so, but I think it's really counterproductive, and I think that they're really misusing their resources. I think there are much better ways to help Palestinians than to give to UNRWA. And I think that as far as making actual change, I think that all the findings, like what I was lucky enough to find on Telegram, all the work that organizations like UN Watch and affiliated organizations are doing to expose, what UNRWA is. I think eventually, I hope eventually those will add up. It'll impact public opinion, which will then impact the decision makers in Congress or in the parliament and parliaments in Europe. And eventually, yeah, there'll be a real change. I hope.
Yeah, I share that hope. I don't know how optimistic I am, but let's see. Thank you, Wes, for the super chat, and thank you, Bonnie, as well. Let's go back to the point that these are teachers we're talking about. Now, on this channel, we've expressed controversial views. Your appearance here is definitely not an endorsement of any of those views, but we have said that one of the problems in how Israel is fighting this war is that it is fighting against Hamas and seemingly denying the fact that the Palestinian people are the enemy. And historically, this it would not be controversial. Nobody in World War II would have said, "Look, the German people, they're suffering. We need to send them fuel and medicine and food." But it's just the Nazis that have somehow nothing to do with the Germans that we're fighting against. Here, there is that approach. Now, when you see that the teachers that you know. The people on October 7th who committed those atrocities went through the school system, many undoubtedly educated by UNRWA, funded by the US, the UK, definitely in some way Israel. This is very built into Palestinian society, and you would think that if anybody in the world wants to further the cause of potential peace between Palestinians and Israel, they would do the exact opposite, right? They would teach very different things than whatever led people to do October 7th, and would not praise attacks like October 7th.
Yeah, I mean, there's an organization that I think works with UNRWA occasionally called Impact SE, I think they're called, and they do a lot of work in scrutinizing the UNRWA textbooks, and they find, so it's at every level the indoctrination into hate, into pro-Hamas sentiment. It's from the teachers themselves, it's from the textbooks, it's from every level of the school system. By the way, a fun fact: one of the heads of Oh, now I'm gonna botch this actually. One of the heads of Hamas, I forgot his name, but he was educated in the UNRWA school. I just forgot his name though, which is very embarrassing. But anyway, you can Google it. But yeah, I think that there's a huge problem. Any long-term solution, whatever that would look like, um, I don't know what that would look like, but any way to actually weed out the hate that unfortunately a lot of the Palestinians have for Israel and for Jews. Um, in order to do that, the education system needs to be addressed. As far as how it could be addressed, I mean, everyone's guess is as good as mine. Any attempts that I think the West would do to try to tone down the hate or erase the hate from these textbooks will be seen as a colonial enterprise. It'll be seen as trying to colonize their textbooks and Europeanize, Westernize their school system. So it's sort of like a catch-22. If good faith actors try to get involved and take care of this issue, they're accused of, you know, Western imperialism. But if you do nothing, then we continue to have people that support what Hamas did on 10/7. I mean, there was a poll that came out from the leading Palestinian opinion poll institute um, a few weeks ago, and it basically found that the majority of Palestinians, a large majority, I think upwards of 70%, if I'm not mistaken, someone can fact check me in the chat, support what Hamas did in 10/7. So, I mean, that doesn't exist in a vacuum. That comes from the schools, you know?
Yeah, and what that poll didn't mention was the people who oppose it, why they oppose it. So the support for it was larger in Judea and Samaria in the West Bank than it was in Gaza,
Right,
because in Gaza, they had already suffered some of the consequences.
right.
So I think there's definitely a question to be asked there. The support for terrorism is widespread. It's there's no doubt about that. But I think the actual support for something like October 7th is probably greater than that poll. The story that poll tells, people may think this was not the right time. We should have been better prepared. We should have had a coordinated attack from
Hmm.
all fronts. So
Interesting.
the fact that people don't support it doesn't mean they think killing Jews is a bad thing.
Right.
Um, yeah, and you mentioned something about westernizing. We'd be accused of Western
Yeah, I mean,
colonialism.
whenever Israel tries to, I think there was one time where Israel tried to get involved with the Palestinian Authority textbooks, or maybe they did something with East Jerusalem textbooks for the Palestinians there, and the same thing. They were accused of trying to like infringe on the autonomy or the whatever the word was of the Palestinian school system, and it's like we just don't want them to teach that Dalal Mughrabi, who executed dozens of Jews in this coastal road massacre on a bus in like 1978. We just don't want the books to say that she's a hero. That's like we're asking for the bare minimum here, you know?
Yeah, and the UN itself is not Western. It's Western funded, but
Mm,
the majority of countries there are evil countries that, again, if you wanted to have an organization that actually works for world peace, you probably have an organization of free and semi-free countries, not an organization where the majority of the countries don't respect the rights of their own citizens and couldn't you have no reason to expect that they'll respect the rights of anyone else. Uh,
yeah.
how how Gaza specific is this? UNRWA in general, or just the education system in the West Bank. How similar is it? It is that part of the region is run by the PLO, the Palestinian Authority. So
Hmm.
is it similar? Is it better?
Sorry about that. So I would imagine that there's a lot of similarities. I mean, like you said, the opinion polls show that a lot of the Palestinians in the West Bank, you know, they support 10/7. So I imagine that there are similar issues. And I think that the how do I explain this? Sorry, do you mind just repeating the question? I lost my train of thought.
So the education system in the West Bank, how problematic is it? Is it compared to the one in Gaza? Is it
Um,
similar? Is it run by UNRWA?
so if I'm not mistaken, yeah, they're run by UNRWA as well. UNRWA has hundreds of schools across the East Jerusalem, West Bank, Gaza, probably even thousands for all I know. And whether they are operating these schools in conjunction or in cooperation with the PA in the West Bank or Hamas and Gaza, I mean, we're talking about a distinction without a difference. I mean, the PA is not exactly a good faith actor as well. The PA is obviously expressed support for 10/7, and they're obviously paying the stipends for the people who are the monsters who executed the attacks on 10/7. But this issue is widespread. It's systemic. It's not just, Gaza specific. I will do some research. I'll try to find a Telegram channel of UNRWA teachers in the West Bank because this UNRWA teacher group is specifically for teachers in Gaza. I'll get back to you if I find another group for the West Bank, but I would imagine that the issues would be pretty similar.
Bob with hat, thank you for the super chat. He says, hummus should be on a plate, not leading the UN/UNRWA. Yeah,
Amen.
we also did we did a show a few weeks ago titled "Genocidal Hummus" because there was the sticker. Did you hear the story about the stickers in London on Israeli hummus saying this hummus funds genocide or something to that effect?
Right.
So. Yeah, that was not the most serious of episodes we did because there were a lot of Hamas hummus
Well,
jokes.
listen, I mean, if you travel around, not to digress too much, but if you travel around Israel, people still laugh, people still do what they can to live life because you have two options. You can either laugh or cry, and you can do a little bit of both, but you have to you have to maintain some.
Yeah, and that's also one of the amazing things and one of the differences that I think people should look at when they judge a conflict and specifically this conflict is that yeah, people in Israel want to live and even through tragedy and even under war, under daily rocket attacks, which you don't hear much about here in mainstream media. We hear about the suffering of people in Gaza. We don't hear about how they brought it on themselves, but we also don't hear about the suffering of people in Israel because people in Israel, that's not what they do. I mean, they mourn the dead. They look towards making sure it doesn't happen again, but they do live, and we've spoken about this as well. It's amazing. Israel is an amazing achievement on its own, even if it wasn't surrounded by people whose only goal in life is to kill Jews. So yeah,
Right.
remember that. Bob with hat with another super chat says, as an Israeli kid, school once sent me to a peace camp near Gaza with Gazans. They were shocked that we had no religious or violent stuff in our textbooks. Yeah, this
Wow.
is, I mean, the
I
situation
mean,
is,
I'm not surprised about what he's saying. I'm surprised that I mean, we need more first person accounts like that, first person testimonies, because that's yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
yeah, I mean, to some extent, I think in Israel they go too far. I saw something today in Ynet where they were talking about blanking on his name. The terrorist was just had an
Oh,
accident.
Salah al-Aruri. I don't know what
Yeah.
that means, but
So,
yeah.
and it was almost like they were praising certain aspects of him, and it was really disturbing to read. I'm sure you don't read anything like
Sorry,
that.
in the Telegram group, actually, I did a follow-up. I was after he was what was it, drone striked. I said, okay, well, let me check the Telegram group and see what my Unra teachers are in Gaza are saying about this. And as you would expect, they're very upset. They're mourning their fallen Hamas leader. So surprise.
Yeah. But when it's in an Israeli website, it is a surprise, and that's I think a problem there. And again,
Mm.
I don't think in Gaza or in the West Bank anybody has anything positive to say about anybody killed in Israel or anything negative to say about the fact that they're killed, including when it's babies being beheaded. This is again, I go back to the point that this is a cultural problem. It's a cultural problem in Palestinian society, and it's a problem that the UN, specifically UNRWA, is responsible for. It's a big part of creating it.
Huge part. Yeah.
Any final thoughts?
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, I would just like to say so. This is interesting, and I think this hopefully will help the audience a little bit. But the UNRWA channel that I found is in Arabic. I am not a fluent Arabic speaker, but we live in a world where we have unbelievable technology that is free and at our fingertips. So when I came across this channel, I said, you know, what'd be really cool is if I looked into this channel and I will just have, all these free online tools translate everything and see what they're saying. Obviously, I had it corroborated afterwards by experts that I'm acquainted with, but the initial finding the content that was with the help of AIs and free online tools. So if any of you are UNRWA Telegram enthusiasts, if any of you guys are interested in doing your own independent research about this, but you're afraid to tackle it because of the language barrier, it's daunting, but it could be done. It could be done, and hopefully that will empower you guys. This message will empower you guys to take a crack at your own research. And there's so much more out there, unfortunately, and we need all the help that we can get to expose it.
Yeah, and anybody who does go in, bear in mind you will see disturbing things. That is something you
Yes,
should, yeah, you
yes.
should take into account. Thank you, Daniel, for the super chat. Bob with Hat, I will try to find that Ynet article and post it in our on our next show, which starts in 5 minutes, the reality show where we are discussing the idea that Israel or Israel and its allies should encourage migration from Gaza. Yeah, as I said, we don't shy away from controversy
That won't
here.
be controversial at all.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm not sure it'll be our most controversial episode, but it'll be up there. Um, so Eitan, where can people find you except the thread on X, which we posted and we'll post again in the chat.
I'm pretty much only active on there as far as this stuff goes. So you can find me at I think my handle is at Fischberger. That's Fischberger. And look forward to seeing you guys there.
Yeah, and you can follow me on X at Razi Ginzberg. I am more controversial there than I am on YouTube because I think the chance of getting kicked off that platform is lower. Uh, Also, for any of our Hebrew speaking audience, there is an interview that I did. I was interviewed in Hebrew that will premiere in about an hour right after our the reality show, which follows in 3 minutes on this channel. Eitan, thank you very much for your work, for appearing on this channel, and hopefully we'll see you back here soon.
Thank you for having me.